As a military history enthusiast, I've always wondered how Prussian and later German armies were able to dominate the battlefields of Europe for almost a century. The answer, in my opinion, lies in the German operational thinking, as can be seen in the Austro-Prussian War of 1866. While Prussia and Austria fought for influence over the minor German states, the newly formed Kingdom of Italy joined on Prussia's side to annex the Italian-speaking parts of Austria. Notice the deployment of troops here. Both Austria and Prussia were under threat from multiple sides. While Austria sent significant forces to each front, Prussia sent the vast majority of its army against Austria. They had identified Austria as their main adversary and only tried to hold off the weaker German troops with a small force. That way, Prussia, with fewer troops in total, was able to concentrate enough forces for the upcoming engagements against Austria to reach parity in numbers. This principle is called Schwerpunkt, or center of gravity. The numerically inferior forces of Prussia and later Germany had to be concentrated where it mattered the most to achieve parity or even superiority. As for the campaign, the Prussian army quickly attacked in 3 columns to facilitate logistics and achieve maximum speed and mobility. Their quick advance surprised the Austrian commander Benedek, and his slower, more cumbersome army didn't attempt to defeat the Prussians in detail. If he tried to catch an isolated Prussian column, it would evade, but his army could not escape if the Prussians chased him. So he decided to occupy a strong defensive position close to the town of Königgrätz and wait for the Prussians to attack. Purely with speed and mobility, the Prussians were able to seize the strategic initiative and impose their will on a now static enemy, susceptible to encirclement, just as the Prussian Supreme Commander Moltke wanted. The battlefield was marked by 2 rivers, the Bistritz to the west and the Elbe to the east. The fortress town of Königgrätz guarded a major crossing over the river. If the Austrians had to fall back, the fortress would cover their retreat across the river. In between the 2 rivers were a chain of small hills. The Austrian army deployed on top of them, forming a defensive perimeter with a reserve force for counterattacks. The first of the 3 Prussian columns arrived in the morning on July 3rd, crossed the Bistritz and immediately engaged their enemy. Fighting dragged on as they couldn't break through the strong defensive positions of the Austrians. Meanwhile, some Austrian corps commanders decided to act against orders and charged the exposed Prussian left flank. They managed to inflict heavy casualties among the Prussians, but couldn't dislodge them completely. At around noon, the second column had also crossed the Bistritz and was pressuring the Austrian left flank hard. However, most importantly, the third Prussian column appeared at around the same time from the north. They attacked the overextended Austrian right flank from behind. The overzealous Austrian corps commanders had to retreat in a hurry so that the Prussians were able to seize a few hilltops. Benedek had to drive them off these hills if he wanted any chance to win, so he committed his reserves in a counterattack. Against the better equipped and trained Prussians, this counterattack completely collapsed. With the left flank also being pushed back, Benedek had no other option but to retreat or risk encirclement. The high degree of coordination between the Prussian columns and their timely arrival on the battlefield was only possible due to the high standard of training of officers and soldiers alike. Higher-ups were expected to lead by directives, that is, to provide objectives for their subordinates to achieve. The exact approach is then chosen by NCOs, who are trained to understand the intentions of their superiors and act in a way that is conducive for the overall goal of the army. The Austrians, on the other hand side, had a more rigid, traditional command system, where orders had to be followed. Thus, the misguided initiative of some corps commanders may have positive effects locally, but disastrous effects for the whole army. After the battle, the Prussians gave chase aggressively and never allowed the Austrian army under Benedek to rest and regroup, effectively neutralizing it for the rest of the short war. This turns Königgrätz into the decisive battle of the conflict. To summarize, the Prussian and later German key to military superiority consists of a clear center of gravity where all available forces are concentrated to achieve maximum effect. Secondly, speed and mobility are of the essence to seize the strategic initiative and force the enemy to react to your actions. This creates opportunities to deal with superior enemies piecemeal, or achieve superior positioning and thus effectively multiplying the power of your own forces. Lastly, a highly qualified army with a common understanding for operations was necessary to conduct swift and complex maneuvers in the fog of war. All three factors combined aim to achieve a battle of annihilation, where the enemy army is neutralized as a fighting force, forcing the enemy to sue for peace. It was with these principles that the German army was able to achieve stunning successes in so many conflicts.